answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
You seated? I want you to remember that no bastard ever won war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country.
That is a clip of General Patton in the movie Patton, which was released in 1970 with some added USA, USA, and at the same time delivering a clear message. We do not want our troops to die for America. We want them to make the others die. But in war, death is inevitable for both sides. And we've got more casualties today because not of the direct action of the enemy, but apparently an accident, a tragic accident involving a KC-135 tanker. I do not know up to date at this point on the latest information that I can confirm that it was linked to Scott Air Force Base. They had numerous KC-135 straddle tankers based out of Scott, and they are the Military Mobility Command. But they also come from other areas. So we're watching for that as well. I have flown with them on a mission, and I will make that a future story behind the story for you. Our prayers for them, 6 crew members on board. And the details are still coming in, but the end result will be on that tanker explosion. Apparently it happened when they were in the process of refueling another plane, not clear which plane or what happened, but it happened obviously quickly. And it was death for those on board. Thank you for joining us for Larry Connors USA, March 13, 2026. And I want to point out to you right now, the U.S. Marines, an expeditionary force, an amphibious unit being put together and being assembled to go into the theater. That's up to 5,000 U.S. Marines. What will be their mission? Still unclear. So we got a lot to learn about that still as we move forward. And with Larry Connors USA, I remind you, you are going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education, specifically on what I just discussed, and even more. In our next hour, Rabbi Barclay from the podcast Rabbi's Table would join us on the anti-Semitic attacks just recently in our nation. And there's no doubt they're being carried out in part because of what we're doing with Iran. We know we've got not just sleeper cells in our nation, and they've yet to coalesce and take out a joint attack, but various radicalized individuals who are stepping out and doing things, attacking a synagogue yesterday and looking for other targets. We'll be getting into that story in more detail later as well. And in fact, in this hour, we're going to be joined by national security analyst on the California threat, the reports that drones might be positioned on ships just off the shore of California. The White House is pushing back and saying that was preliminary, not validated, but the word is out already. So you got to deal with it. And how much of it is a real threat and how much of it is just talk. I will tell you, I've said repeatedly, that kind of thing could happen. We don't have to have Iran have a missile capable of reaching from Iran to our shores. But they could put things on ships and get closer where they could carry out such an event, be it with missiles or suicide drones. And California was mentioned as the prime target. And this Sunday in L.A., you have the Oscars. And the Oscar committee is telling participants, please come, you'll be safe. We have federal and state police and city police ready to help. In other words, now they realize we might really need law enforcement. Think that would be a shock to the Hollywood elites who want to defund police and pull all funding from military if they can? We'll get into that as well. And our story behind the story today, a time that you might recall directly, when the nation was frightened, buckled at the knees, because reports were surfacing of folks who took Tylenol and found out it had been laced with cyanide. There were deaths. There was mass hysteria and confusion. And whatever happened to the case, whatever happened to anyone being convicted of poisoning the Tylenol? That's the story behind the story before we wrap up this hour. Now, regarding the report of the Marines being called to duty and put together as an expeditionary possible amphibious force, the Pentagon is moving this unit and more warships to the Middle East, primarily around the Strait of Hormuz. Defense Secretary of War, I want to correct that, Secretary of War. I picked up a piece of AP copy that said, or Wall Street Journal, Defense Secretary. He is the Secretary of War as declared by President Trump. Secretary of War Hegseth has approved a request from CENTCOM for that amphibious-ready group and attached the Marine Expeditionary Unit. This would involve several warships, at least 5,000 Marines. So we have that underway. And then we have the report of a KC-135 tanker crew killed, as reported by ABC.
General Kane also mentioning the 4 American service members who were killed in a plane crash over Iraq.
The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation. As CENTCOM announced this morning, 4 airmen have been recovered, and the Air Force and U.S. Central Command will provide updates as information becomes available. Please keep these brave airmen, their families, friends, and units in your thoughts in the coming hours and days.
6 crew members aboard this KC-135. And again, it went down while doing a refueling operation with another plane. More details yet to come, but with these 6 dead, that brings to 13 U.S. service members killed in action during Operation Epic Fury. As you heard from the words of General Patton in his movie, and those were recording, or rather quoting what he had said to troops himself during World War II, you don't want to die for your country. You want the other guy to die for his country. General Patton was a key figure in developing our armored doctrine. And in World War II, he led the U.S. 7th Army in the invasion of Sicily and later the 3rd Army in the 44 European campaign. Also vital in the Battle of the Bulge. But the message rings clear. Whatever war you get into, you're not sending your men to die for their country, hopefully, and women nowadays, but to make the other person die for their country. Told you the other day about a fighter jet shot down in the Iranian Operation Epic Fury. Female fighter pilot was able to safely eject and landed on the shores of Kuwait. Every man and woman we have in that theater, whether they are directly involved in an action, you need to keep in your prayers, because Iran is looking for targets anywhere. That's why they're hitting some of their neighbors, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, in Kuwait because they know they can find U.S. forces, sometimes on a U.S. base, sometimes just in the general population. Word else all coming out from the president, as acknowledged the other day and reaffirming by Scott Bessent, the U.S. is escorting oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz.
In a new interview with Sky News, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. Navy will be escorting oil tankers through the strait.
That was always in our planning, that there's the chance that U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition will be escorting oil tankers through. There are, in fact, tankers coming through now, Iranian tankers, I believe some Chinese flag tankers have come through, so we know that they have not mined the straits. My belief that as soon as it is militarily possible, the U.S. Navy, perhaps with an international coalition, will be escorting vessels through.
And of course, Iran was more than willing to allow the Chinese oil ships to go through. But his point being, if they get through the Strait of Hormuz, then obviously it's not mined entirely, but we'll still be willing to escort any other ships going through that we want to make sure make their destination. Well, the word of the drones that came out yesterday, the White House is criticizing and saying that it was premature. They were working one ABC station or network operating on a statement from the FBI that they had to be concerned and high alert about drones being brought close to the shore of California, then launched from a ship. Again, the White House extremely critical that you're starting fear. But this is something I've suggested previously. This certainly could happen. Whether it is or is not, still not clear. But the FBI says it's always had plans and such an event should happen.
It's been considered for many, many years that we might come to the point of hostilities with Iran. And for that reason, the FBI developed a plan years ago of exactly how they would go about assessing the threat climate across the country relative to if hostilities broke out. Well, we're there. It's time to take that plan off the shelf and start making sure that we're doing some of those things that we thought about doing many years ago, contacting sources, reviving old cases, finding people from cases that are over, people who had served their time, and recontacting them. So this is the sort of activity that we expect and we hope that the Bureau is engaged in right now. I'm sure they are, and we are likely to see more of this.
Yeah, but it's time, of course, with so much chaos, of course, after Doge and other things.
What? We let that play behind that because that was after the FBI statement. That was Aaron Burnett, CNN's got to point out there's a lot of chaos going on here. So that might have been the plan. We don't know what happened. And I got to tell you, the source was Andrew McCabe, disgraced FBI agent. He did have direct ties to the probes concerning the investigation of Trump's, quote, ties to Russia. He knew what was right and what wasn't, and yet he went ahead and did it. And then he served as acting FBI director after Trump fired Comey. But what he's talking about, the FBI plan on dealing with offshore munitions being fired at us, I think he's being accurate about that. There was a question raised from Wolf Blitzer regarding dealing with a threat coming from offshore.
I want to also turn, while I have you, Senator, to that devastating bombing of a girls' school in southern Iran. According to an ongoing military investigation, the U.S. was responsible, and outdated information could be to blame. You're a member of the Intelligence Committee. You're briefed on all of this. What information are you receiving, first of all, about this?
Well, I have very deep concerns about how this site was targeted. Obviously, it was next to naval operations, but even in New York Times reporting this morning, they were able to see the site clearly in publicly available data that shows this was clearly a school. So I have very serious questions that I asked in the Armed Services Committee hearing this morning of our top generals, asking specifically, how was this location targeted? What tools were used? Was AI used? What is the oversight responsibility of commanders to make sure these sites aren't targeted? I want to know what Secretary Hegseth knew about this targeting. He has undermined the resources that we put aside in the armed services to ensure that civilians are not targeted in any military operations, and he has degraded that those sets of personnel and resources. I don't think we've had the oversight and accountability that we are entitled to.
All right, enough. I'm tired of it. All she's doing is degrading Hegseth, saying that he degraded our military. No, he did not. He got rid of your woke attitude inside the military to make us a warrior machine. In the fog of war, accidents happen. We had 3 of our jets shot down by an ally in Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates as well. Even the senator responding at that point had to admit that, well, yes, this was near a school. That's New York Senator Gillibrand. But all she wants to do is take a tragedy, and an accident and a fog of war event and turn it into political, hey, we need to get rid of Hegseth. Want to see him resign, see him booted out because he doesn't know what he's doing. She has no idea what she is discussing. But that's what you're seeing from the left. Here's another perfect example. MSN Now, Simone Sanders questioning Senator Coons of Delaware.
I just want to take a step back for a second because the events of today, they are harrowing. I know we do not yet know why the events unfolded in Michigan, but a synagogue was targeted, and I think the Jewish community across this country feels under attack. I am not divorcing that from the feeling that there are many other Americans that also feel under attack. The immigrant community. And
there you go again. See, they got to slip in the immigrant community. She was talking about a specific attack against a Jewish synagogue in Michigan. We're going to deal with that. I've got a heritage expert on national security affairs and protection coming up on that specific question. And our story behind the story, the case of the Tylenol poisonings. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting, they will take care of that. You need some mold remediation, they can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington. Finally, March, the season of fresh starts, more daylight, more energy. A perfect time to take a fresh look at your home. Your windows or doors are outdated and efficient? Check with Renewal by Andersen. From your first design consultation through final installation, every detail is handled by one experienced, dedicated team. Clear communication, precise craftsmanship. Renewal by Andersen windows built with our exclusive Fibrex material, stronger than vinyl. And right now, during our March savings event, take $400 off every window, $800 off every door, and get a free upgrade to Smart Sun Glass. No money down, no payments, no interest for 12 months. But this ends March 31st. Call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS, or visit rbastl.com. rbastl.com. Superior products, exceptional service. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com.
This is NewsTalkSTL.
I said, brother, if you only knew, you'd wish that you were in my shoes. You just keep on using me until you use me up. Until you use me up.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
The FBI warning of possible Iranian drone attacks on our homeland. A new alert reviewed by ABC News revealing Iran's aspirations to conduct a surprise attack specifically against unspecified targets in California. The FBI saying it's warned police departments across the Golden State now of strikes by unmanned aerial vehicles or drones as tensions rise in the Middle East.
And that has been a fact as it was reported yesterday. Now, that originally came as a report that ABC or an ABC station got hold of an FBI alert that they sent out. Immediately, the White House and Carolyn Levitt stepped forward and said, that's not true, it's wrong, it's fake news. I'm not going to rush to the judgment to accept her word. My belief is that it was probably true, but it was not meant for public dissemination to avoid scaring the public at the time. This happens all the time, though. But in this case, it got seized on, particularly because they're talking about how the homeland could be hit by Iran. The guest we had booked, he was up against a tight schedule. We knew it, and just could not continue to keep on the schedule that he needed. So we'll have to try to book him again. But he is a senior research fellow for strategic deterrence with the Heritage Foundation. And he knows what we need to be doing to take care of and protecting the nation as a whole. He wrote an excellent piece the other day I want to share with you in a moment, and that is what we need to do for national security and have stability in a 3 nuclear peer world. Offensive strike options, missile defense, and to abandon mutual vulnerability. Now, that's a mouthful, but there's certain takeaways I want to get into in that in a moment. But back to the issue about, is Iran, despite if you believe or don't believe the FBI report or the report from the White House that was all fabricated and got blown out of proportion, I say it's still possible. And I've said it previously. They don't have the capability in Iran at this point to launch a missile from Iran to hit our continent. But they've talked about they would like to have a missile program to get into space. Their whole idea of getting into the space is to have that kind of missile capability that in turn could be used to drop something into our nation. And I'd point out, if they can't do that, they'll find other options. One of them, obviously, trucking something across Canada if they can. Let's make it very direct and clear. They could do that. They'll probably have better opportunity getting into Canada and coming across the northern border. But even aside from that, the report that came out yesterday warning and an FBI alert that they might try to hit a U.S. state, specifically California, to get a boat under some foreign flag possibly to escape any other detection, to get close enough where it can either help launch missiles and or a swarm of suicide drones. In California being a very large target, because when they go, they do not care where they land. And any such strike inside the homeland is going to ratchet up more fear, obviously. And we've got, as you heard in the previous segment, the left is complaining, well, we hit a school, a children's school in Iran, and Hegseth should resign. We need to know why it happened. We have to acknowledge that, again, the fog of war means you might have confusion. We've been the victim of it already, as I pointed out. We've had 3 of our fighters shot down by some of our allied forces thinking they were targeting Iranian fighters. Thank God our 6 crew members of those planes were able to safely escape. Parachute to safety. And we've had obvious knowledge and have seen it happen already that Iran does like to hide inside and under schools, hospitals, nurseries, inside communities, because they don't care about, quote, collateral damage. But the U.S. is we're admitting that, yes, that school was not intended to be the target, and in part it might be bad or dated intel. That's still to be decided. If a missile was sent in on a GPS target alert, it was going to hit that facility, whatever it was. But maybe what was there had been moved. Or maybe it never was there. We don't know. But we continue in the midst of this to have leftist senators in particular and House members, and some Republicans are in that mix, do not deny they don't exist, decrying that we are wrong, we don't know what we're doing, that Hegseth needs to be ousted, and that our military is not as functional as it was before Trump and Hegseth took over. I shudder to think, I really do, as if we were in this conflict right now with the military we had under Joe Biden, because it was more woke than war. Thank God we have had a change. If we had a mistake this time around, obviously, deep grief. And I would share in that. Even though these are Iranians, we're not against Iranians. We're against the regime and what they're trying to do to us. And aside from them either launching an attack offshore from California, we have to worry about what's happening inside the nation. We already know an uncounted number of illegals in our country are either sympathizer or maybe directly tied to these terrorist operations. And we certainly suspect and probably know in the higher ranks of surveillance that there are actual terrorist cells inside our nation plotting something at some time. And then from time to time, you get some of these individual sympathizers carrying out an action. That was one of the events yesterday. A wannabe car bomber. He crashes his car into a preschool at a Michigan synagogue and jumps out and starts shooting. A security guard for the synagogue returned fire, stopping him. There were 140 students inside that building when he smashed his car in. This is a Lebanese American. He came here from Lebanon decades ago, even served in one of our National Guard units, but is still radicalized or had been. So he was shot and countered attack by a guard at the synagogue, and then either by a kill switch that was activated when he died or a switch that he activated directly, the car blew up, sparking a fire with smoke all through the school. The only one dead was him, thank God. Found inside the car, burned beyond recognition. Armed with that rifle, and mortar shells were in the rear of the vehicle. He's been in our nation since 2011. Since 2011, he's become an American citizen from the time he came in. You have to be aware of your surroundings. I say that from time to time, not to create fear, but you got to be paying attention. And again, I regret we were not able to time it out so we could get our guest on board for us. We'll try to schedule him again next week because the situation is not going away. But he wrote an excellent piece about we have to keep in mind a largely defenseless U.S. will give adversaries the impression that they aim their attack just right. The U.S. will not respond. In other words, if they attack one of our allies but is not directly affecting the U.S., will we hold to some of these mutual agreements as we would under NATO and others? Do we need to basically divorce ourselves from some of those? Robert Peters, Senior Research Fellow, Strategic Defense for the Heritage Foundation, says it's imperative that we field more and more diverse and offensive nuclear strike options to include those based in the homeland. Excellent point. Coming up, the story behind the story. Some of you might remember it personally when the entire nation was frightened to take Tylenol, poisoning cases.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I want to share something with you. Cooking a pizza using coal creates an amazing pizza. Only one place to get it, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. Of course, they offer a wide variety of pasta, but you just visit the website NapoliSTL.com, dine in or take out, and get ready for patio season. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Try it. You can thank me later. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Finally, March, the season of fresh starts, more daylight, more energy. A perfect time to take a fresh look at your home. Your windows or doors are outdated and efficient? Check with Renewal by Andersen. From your first design consultation through final installation, every detail is handled by one experienced, dedicated team. Clear communication, precise craftsmanship. Renewal by Andersen windows built with our exclusive Fibrex material, stronger than vinyl. And right now, during our March savings event, take $400 off every window, $800 off every door, and get a free upgrade to Smart Sun Glass. No money down, no payments, no interest for 12 months. But this ends March 31st. Call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS, or visit rbastl.com. rbastl.com. Superior products, exceptional service. When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Onder wins. Onder, O-N-D-E-R, underlaw.com.
This is News Talk STL.
You should have closed your windows and got another dog. You should have chained up all the doors and switched up all the locks. And how many times have I prayed?
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
It's one of the most infamous crimes in American history.
The Tylenol murders scared the crap out of everybody.
7 people dead after taking Tylenol laced with poison.
It is tragic, she said. Insanity. God help us all.
Something so banal as a medicine turned into a weapon of death.
There still may be more deadly Tylenol out there somewhere.
And law enforcement officials continued what is being called the biggest manhunt in Illinois history.
Twists and turns in the Tylenol case are like nothing I've ever seen before.
There are reports that an extortionist is behind the murders in Chicago.
And he says, if you don't give me $1 million, I'm going to go kill a bunch more.
A single page that would turn the investigation on its head for years to come.
There are reports that an extortionist is behind the murders in Chicago. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, the FBI is investigating a Chicago man who allegedly mailed a letter to the makers of Tylenol demanding $1 million.
The extortionist wrote, "Gentlemen, as you can see, it is easy to place cyanide into capsules sitting on store shelves. It is easy to get buyers to swallow the bitter pill."
And he says, if you don't pay me money, I'm going to do this again because I know how to do it. I did it.
The writer warned, if you don't mind the publicity of these little capsules, then do nothing.
They're all going to die immediately. If you don't give me $1 million, I'm going to go kill a bunch more.
Another letter addressed to the White House threatened President Ronald Reagan with more poisonings if he raised taxes.
The poisoner that put cyanide poison inside Tylenol capsules changed everything for the drug world and our concern about drug tampering. All this dates back to what was happening in Chicago in 1982. Perhaps you recall suddenly that fear, and you didn't want any Tylenol in your home. And in fact, Tylenol ends up pulling all Tylenol from the shelves. Took a major hit. We'll get into that as well, because that is another part of the story and actually another victim of the man who poisoned the Tylenol. You heard that an extortion letter was written Even a letter sent to the president. If you raise taxes again, I'll poison more. So who are they looking for? In what way? Well, keep in mind, the Tylenol had been poisoned, most of it, if not all of it, prior to the first victim. First victim hospitalized after consuming a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol died the next day, but that was the first of many beginning September 29, 1982.
My dad was all about the family. He loved his family. That was his world. He used to spoil me a lot. I was Daddy's little girl. It was great.
Kasha's father picked her up from preschool on Wednesday, September 29th, 1982, his day off from work.
And we went to Jewel to run some errands. Picked up some flowers for my mom, which my mom would tell me that he was a romantic.
Kasha still recalls the fateful moment her father, who wasn't feeling well, reached for a bottle of America's leading pain reliever.
I remember him picking up the bottle, put it in his basket, and, it was time for us to go. We went home. He gave her the flowers, and I thought that was so sweet. And that's when our lives just changed forever. When I heard my mom screaming, I ran to him along with my brother. I remember standing by him and just nudging him and just saying, "Wake up, Tata, wake up." But he wouldn't wake up.
Charles Kramer was a young lieutenant in the Arlington Heights Fire Department when the emergency call came in.
It's one of the calls that will go down that I'll never forget. I can remember every detail, even though I'm 83 years old, I can still remember every single detail. He responded to nothing we did. The breathing was rapid and shallow. His eyes were fixed and dilated like he was already dead.
Paramedics rushed Adam to Northwest Community Hospital, just 3 blocks away. The 27-year-old died later that afternoon from an apparent heart attack.
But it was not. It turned out to be the cyanide placed in the Tylenol pill. A couple of his own relatives, because of his death, had headaches, didn't feel well, and they went home and they also took Tylenol. No one knew the connection at that point. Only by chance, one sheriff's team began to recognize there was an empty, or rather an open bottle of Tylenol and pills missing. And they started questioning that. In 1983, at the FBI request, they had a Chicago Tribune columnist, Bob Green, publish the address and grave victims of the first and youngest victim, hoping that maybe the guy would show up at the grave. And the deaths were still adding up.
In 1982, I was 8 years old, and my mom had just gotten back from the maternity ward, went to the grocery store and bought Tylenol from the grocery store that was doctor's orders. And the next thing I knew, I just saw my mom go out on a stretcher from my upstairs window, and that was the last that I saw her.
Mary Reiner's Tylenol had been inexplicably spiked with poison.
3 people are dead, and another is in critical condition tonight.
One of the victims took the pills he bought to his home.
His brother and sister-in-law were so upset by his death that they went back to the house and took some Tylenol from the same bottle.
As the death toll hit 7, the terrifying randomness of the poisonings shocked the nation.
That bizarre mystery of Tylenol laced with cyanide still has not been solved tonight.
Investigators say they are searching for, quote, a madman.
People were terrorized. They didn't know what product they had in their home that could possibly be lethal if they ingested it.
Scared, really, that somebody could have tampered with some of the other products.
We had police riding around with their bullhorns, yelling, "Throw out your Tylenol, flush it down the toilet."
Do not take any Tylenol until further notice.
And the search for suspect was underway. A lot of false leads. And in fact, one false lead led to a death, a shooting. But one name did surface. It had some interest. So there is more to the story behind the story.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Do you know why I endorse Cafe Napoli, all the locations? Visit any of them, and you will quickly appreciate the quality of food, service, atmosphere. So maybe I'll see you at Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli Kirkwood, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Or maybe you'll find me at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Now you know why I endorse Napoli, NapoliSTL.com.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, the end of the story behind the story.
We don't know the extent of the contaminations.
In September 1982, widespread panic reached the medicine cabinets of millions of Americans.
A capsule of Tylenol was laced with cyanide.
7 people between 12 and 35 years old died after ingesting extra-strength Tylenol capsules laced with cyanide and sold at stores in the Chicago suburbs.
The Food and Drug Administration is now urging consumers nationwide to stop taking Tylenol.
And they were doing that. But the fear was out there. And as names began to surface, some folks were going to wait. One man decided to take it on himself to kill someone suspected of the Tylenol poisonings. He didn't shoot the man he intended. He misidentified him. He shot a perfectly innocent man, killing him. And later the man admitted, after his 30-year sentence for murder from prison, he stated, "I killed a man, a perfectly innocent person. I had choices. I could have walked away." So that was still an 8th victim from the Tylenol poisonings. The FBI was using all of its possible devices available at that time.
2008, a seemingly relaxed James Lewis sitting in a hotel room wearing shorts and a t-shirt theorizes with Special Agent Roy Lane about how someone, even a 15-year-old with the right knowledge, could have easily laced capsules with cyanide, killing 7 people without leaving a trace of evidence.
So yeah, I think that 15-year-olds could have had enough
the awareness
to know to try to avoid cameras.
I guess you put too much definition. And he explains while avoiding getting caught on the few drugstore security cameras that existed back then in 1982.
We bought a bottle a month before and played with it until they got it right. It sounds to me like somebody did a premix.
That would be my assumption.
Open the bottle, toss them, and walk to the next show.
His name, James Lewis. That was part of an FBI interview with him. By the end of October 1982, Tylenol cyanide-laced capsules killed 7 in the Chicago area. And there was that extortion note that had been sent earlier. I'll kill more if I don't get $1 million. And then a letter to the president, if you raise taxes, I will kill more. The FBI had no physical evidence against James Lewis. But they were able to confirm that he wrote the extortion letter. But they could not tie him to the Tylenol case specifically. And over all of his years, he claimed, "I'm innocent. I did nothing but write the letter. I wrote the extortion letter trying to draw attention to how it could happen." He still remained the subject of law enforcement interest until 3 years ago when he finally died. So he had 7 killed by the laced Tylenol. 1, an innocent man killed because someone thought he was the Tylenol poisoner. And then you had the corporate image severely damaged, almost killed, for Johnson & Johnson and how they reacted.
Johnson & Johnson grappled with a $100 million recall and the future of one of its most lucrative brands.
The question became, how do we regain trust? It wasn't in the efficacy of the medicine. Tylenol works. trust was lost in the packaging because the packaging had enabled the poison, the cyanide, to be entered into the medicine.
6 weeks to the day since the Tylenol murder story broke, Johnson & Johnson held a news conference in New York to reintroduce Tylenol.
Tylenol capsules. It had the cotton ball, it had aluminum over the top, it had a childproof cap, it had plastic over the childproof cap. Those levels of safety became the levels of trust.
I think they're going the extra mile to make it sure that it's consumer safe.
Tylenol, the so-called eighth victim of this tragedy, is continuing to recover.
A business turnaround one analyst calls the greatest comeback since Lazarus.
And then Tylenol was able to resurrect itself. Their market share collapsed because of the scare from 35% to 8%. It rebounded in less than a year. That was credited to the company's prompt and aggressive reaction, reintroducing capsules in a new triple-sealed package, coupled with heavy promotions. Within years, Tylenol had regained the highest market share for such an over-the-counter drug in the U.S. But again, the 1982 Chicago Tylenol murders killed 7 who actually took the Tylenol laced with cyanide, including 3 members of the same family. Because, as I said earlier, when the father died, relatives who came to grieve suffered headaches, and they saw the Tylenol, so they decided to take it, and they died of it. The only suspect considered the prime suspect was James Lewis, considered the prime suspect for decades. But as I say, he died 3 years ago at age 76, never charged with the murders, but was convicted with extortion, trying to make money off of it. There's still no direct physical evidence ever connecting Lewis or anyone else to the poisonings. So with a murder case, it's still active. It's not closed. There is no statute of limitations. But whoever carried out the poisoning, for whatever reason, the fact is we may never know. But it did change everything you buy over the counter, did it not? How much different seals you had to break to get any kind of medicine available. Not just childproofing, but making sure no one can get into it and contaminate it. The story behind the story. Monday story behind the story, I'm going to build it off of the tragedy that happened with a KC-135 tanker going down and share how I was on a mission with them on a flight at one point. Second hour still to come.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Finally, March, the season of fresh starts, more daylight, more energy. A perfect time to take a fresh look at your home. Your windows or doors are outdated and efficient? Check with Renewal by Andersen. From your first design consultation through final installation, every detail is handled by one experienced, dedicated team. Clear communication, precise craftsmanship. Renewal by Andersen windows built with our exclusive Fibrex material, stronger than vinyl. And right now, during our March savings event, take $400 off every window, $800 off every door, and get a free upgrade to Smart Sun Glass. No money down, no payments, no interest for 12 months. But this ends March 31st. Call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS, or visit rbastl.com. rbastl.com. Superior products, exceptional service. Let's be candid, honest. No out-of-state law firm can represent you better than Onder Law. O-N-D-E-R. Hometown roots, attorneys living right here with you and your family. When you suffer an injury because someone else was negligent, Onder Law will make sure the other party takes full responsibility. You'll get full compensation, not a backroom deal worked out with some insurance companies. And, of course, we're moving into the stormy season. And again, when you have a legitimate claim, you should be properly compensated. Onder Law does not toy around with adjusters, investigators, lawyers trained to cheat you of what is rightfully yours. Onder Law has already recovered millions for families across Missouri and Illinois. Onder wins. Not just a catchy phrase, it's a fact. So I'll repeat it. Onder wins. OnderLaw.com. ONDER. Onderlaw.com wins.
This is NewsTalkSTL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
He wasn't going to let Iran strike first. He wasn't going to let this regime make the first attack, as he feared and believed they would, on American soldiers and American troops. Wasn't going to happen. He was going to decapitate that regime. So whether you're talking about what we're doing to fight the drug cartels in the Western Hemisphere, if you're talking about the Maduro operation, if you're talking about Midnight Hammer or Operation Epic Fury, this is a president who's making clear the world's superpower will not shirk from doing what is necessary to protect the quality of life that every American has an absolute right to enjoy.
And, of course, trying to make things better for the Iranian people. Our goal is not to have nation building and putting new leadership and control in Tehran. But they are a threat to our national security as they exist. So we need to have them removed. The Iranian people will have to make that decision. And we know that numerous elements are working to help them outside their country. And I have no doubt that our CIA might be involved in some position, but I do not want boots on the ground in Iran to establish a new regime. If we're going to send any boots in, they must be on a specified mission maybe with the Israeli Defense Forces as well, do that mission, get back out. As I pointed out to you yesterday, while we were talking about rumors that Trump might want to reactivate selective service, I should say, the conscription, our draft. He's not, but he's also said all options are on the table. That's what you tell your enemy. But it's been enough for the left to start jawboning that, again, Trump is going to get us into another quagmire like Vietnam, Afghanistan. We have had additional U.S. casualties since yesterday. And we have a report that more Marines are being dispatched into the region. I'll break it down for you. Welcome aboard hour number 2, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. When we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter. Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. Everything goes up as a podcast later, available at NewsTalkSTL and LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook. And if you watch or listen at a later time, please push the share button, send it on to others. You are our multiplying force, and I thank you. With Larry Connors USA, we're going to bring you every day, every hour, news, analysis, commentary, and education. And part of the education in the last hour dealt with our story behind the story, the Tylenol poisonings that frightened the nation back in the 80s. Did you miss it? You can pull it up on a podcast. Many of you might recall your own personal concern at that time. Or maybe you were too young to even know about it. You go back and pull up our podcast, you can get all the details. Later this hour, Rabbi Barclay, he hosts the podcast Rabbi's Table. We're going to talk about the increasing anti-Semitic attacks, such as we saw yesterday in Michigan at a synagogue and others, and how we can expect to see even more by individuals radicalized to be fighting because we're going after Iran. Not the people, the leadership. Because the leadership practices and shouts, kill America, the great Satan, and kill Jews, and kill anyone that will not conform to our religion. And in the meantime, we are seeing ships make their way through the Hormuz Straits. So that does tell us that maybe it's not mined all the way across. Or maybe they have inside information. I'm talking about oil bound for China, oil shipments involving Iran. So if we can get ships through there, well, then we should do so. But President Trump had said the other day we would consider escorting tankers. Treasury Secretary Bessent underscoring that point.
General Kane also mentioning the 4 American service members who were killed in a plane crash over Iraq.
The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation. As CENTCOM announced this morning, 4 airmen have been recovered, and the Air Force and U.S. Central Command will provide updates as information becomes available. Please keep these brave airmen, their families, friends, and units in your thoughts in the coming hours and days.
Then again, that's General Kane, Raising Kane, talking about the tragedy involving the KC-135 straddle tanker. All 6 crewmen on board dying, apparently as they were in a refueling with another jet. Details on the other jet, if it was one of the U.S. jets or an allied jet, it did land safely. So we've had additional casualties. And we're doing everything we can to make the area safe, but in the midst of a war, you do have confusion of some type. We don't know if there was a personal element, a human element involved in what happened, or it was mechanical. I told you there was a time that I took a flight on a KC-135 out of Scott Air Force Base on one of their refueling missions, and sitting in the back with the boom operator watching how that happens. It's pretty damn amazing. Awesome and frightening to some extent. I'd also told you earlier that Trump has stated we will begin to help escort tankers through the Hormuz Strait. I'll go back through that in more detail for you in a moment. And, of course, I will add to you again that we are moving a Marine Expeditionary Unit and more warships to the Middle East. So we're talking about 5,000 Marines, possibly for amphibious landings. Where? Well, you're not going to be told. If I had the information, I wouldn't tell you. We would not tip that off to the enemy. The word that came out yesterday that the FBI had issued a special alert that Iran was going to put drones, suicide drones or other munitions on a ship and get it close enough to our West Coast shore to attack maybe California. The White House immediately started denouncing that and saying that's premature, it's not right. They basically made it up. I'm not so sure that they did entirely. We've always considered that possibility had to exist. Even disgraced FBI Director McCabe, who followed Comey and, of course, then got cut as well, and one of the ones instrumental in investigating Trump, acknowledged in a recent interview that we've always had concern about such a plan.
It's been considered for many, many years that we might come to the point of hostilities with Iran. And for that reason, the FBI developed a plan years ago of exactly how they would go about assessing the threat climate across the country relative to if hostilities broke out. Well, we're there. It's time to take that plan off the shelf and start making sure that we're doing some of those things that we thought about doing many years ago, contacting sources, reviving old cases, finding people from cases that are over, people who had served their time, and recontacting them. So this is the sort of activity that we expect and we hope that the Bureau is engaged in right now. I'm sure they are, and we are likely to see more of this.
Yeah, but it's time, of course, with so much chaos, of course, after Doge and other things.
Just could not let his statement stand. As much as I detest McCabe, that was CNN host Aaron Burnett having to add, well, of course, we're in so much chaos, of course, after Doge and other things. It has no connection nor linkage. But that's the way the leftist wants to stamp everything. Link it back to anything that they thought should not have happened. Anything to discredit what we are doing. The other day, U.S. forces involved in one fashion or another hit a school, a girls' school, and the question is, was it mistargeted? Was it misidentified? Did we have bad intel? Had it been there, had been moved? Because in the end, it was still a place for young girls. And, of course, the left wants to make that a clear case for we don't know what we're doing. And Wolf Blitzer is more than glad to go line and coordinate with them as he interviewed New York Senator Gillibrand.
I want to also turn, while I have you, Senator, to that devastating bombing of a girls' school in southern Iran. According to an ongoing military investigation, the U.S. was responsible and outdated information could be to blame. You're a member of the Intelligence Committee. You're briefed on all of this. What information are you receiving, first of all, about this?
Well, I have very deep concerns about how this site was targeted. Obviously, it was next to naval operations, but even in New York Times reporting this morning, they were able to see the site clearly in publicly available data that shows this was clearly a school. So I have very serious questions that I asked in the Armed Services Committee hearing this morning of our top generals, asking specifically, how was this location targeted? What tools were used? Was AI used? What is the oversight responsibility of commanders to make sure these sites aren't targeted? I want to know what Secretary Hegseth knew about this targeting. He has undermined the resources that we put aside in the armed services to ensure that civilians are not targeted in any military operations, and he has degraded that those sets of personnel and resources. I don't think we've had the oversight and accountability that we are entitled to. We have yet to have an open hearing on the Iran war in the Armed Services Committee. So I have a great deal of questions, and I think Secretary Hegseth should resign because of this failure.
Throw everything against the wall. Hegseth should resign because of this. And, of course, she claims that Hegseth degraded our military. What he did was kick all the wokeness out. And after Trump came in, we had a quick and fast, rapid uptick in Americans wanting to register and sign up with one of our military branches, willing to serve under Trump, not under Joe Biden. And again, the story that came out the other day, just yesterday, that maybe Iran is preparing to launch drones off of a boat that can get close enough to our shore. There's been that concern. And there's also the recent attacks on Jews in our country. And in fact, once again, here's an example of how MSN Now co-host Simone Sanders was taking the attack on the synagogue and again trying to turn it into a broader fear of Trump.
I just want to take a step back for a second because the events of today, they are harrowing. I know we do not yet know why the events unfolded in Michigan, but a synagogue was targeted, and I think the Jewish community across this country feels under attack. I am not divorcing that from the feeling that there are many other Americans that also feel under attack. The immigrant community in this country feels under attack by its own government. What can you say to folks out there right now who may be listening, watching our program or listening in their cars or as they're on the go, and they are concerned, they are anxious, they're scared?
You see that? You see what she's doing? The events at the synagogue. I think the Jewish community is under the attack, feels under attack. I'm not going to divorce that from the other Americans feeling under attack, such as the immigrant community. The immigrant community is not under attack anyway. The illegal community is, if they're here illegally. But don't let the facts get in the way of a good narrative. We talked about beefing up protection at the Hormuz Strait, including U.S. escorts. And as I said, Treasury Secretary Bessent echoing President Trump.
In a new interview with Sky News, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. Navy will be escorting oil tankers through the strait.
That was always in our planning, that there's the chance that U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition will be escorting oil tankers through. There are, in fact, tankers coming through now, Iranian tankers, I believe some Chinese flag tankers have come through, so we know that they have not mined the straits. My belief that as soon as it is militarily possible, the U.S. Navy, perhaps with an international coalition, will be escorting vessels through.
So that's probably going to happen sooner than later, obviously. And as I pointed out earlier, the Pentagon is moving a Marine Expeditionary Unit and more warships to the Middle East. particularly around the Strait of Hormuz. This would include an element of an amphibious ready group, which is what the Marines pride themselves on, and consists of additional warships and something like maybe 5,000 Marines. That does not say we're going to storm the shores of Iran. But it does say we're going to do what we need to protect our troops already in the region. But you're going to hear from the left, this is just another effort to get us in a quagmire, Vietnam, Afghanistan all over again. Now, what about the attacks inside our nation from those sympathetic to Iran and the Ayatollah? And one attack yesterday, as we were discussing, on that synagogue in Michigan with a car bomb. Thank goodness it didn't go off. I'll discuss that with my guest coming up. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Previously, I've told you about dustless blasting, a special service offered by Wellington Environmental. It could work for you in your place. Recently, a crew removed a driveway sealer that had failed. The owner wanted to go back to the original concrete so it could be properly sealed. Dustless blasting worked. That homeowner is happy. Now, sometimes surfaces need pressure washing instead of blasting. In fact, there was an exterior stone fireplace cleansed by pressure washing, and when it dried, all the dark stain was gone. That stone had its original appearance. Wellington is versatile with blasting. Dustless blasting, or whatever you need. They will evaluate and make a decision. How do you get them to your door? Very easy. Call 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Wellington Environmental, making your world great. In fact, be safe, be well with Wellington Environmental. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. As we were discussing earlier, we had a couple attacks on Jews yesterday. One of them in particular, a guy driving a car loaded with explosives into a Michigan synagogue Thank goodness he was the only one killed. Security guard at the synagogue shot him down as he came out of a car with a rifle, but he also had explosive devices, and he either triggered them or had a dead man switch, and it went off. 140 students were inside. And, of course, you're going to hear the leftist media say there's no clear motive, no understanding. I will accept we don't know exactly, but we know exactly also, don't we? We know, but we don't. We know it was an anti-Semitic attack, and it is tied to what's happening in Iran. You're stupid if you think otherwise. Joining us now, Rabbi Michael Barclay, on that synagogue attack. He has his own podcast, The Rabbi's Table, Dialogue, Not Debate. Rabbi, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do for this country and for the world.
Well, I'm honored to have the position. God's blessed me, and the same for you. You were not surprised when the word came out about still another attack against Jews yesterday, were you?
Not in the slightest.
And attacking directly a Michigan synagogue, knowing children were there.
It's not only not surprising, it's predictable. And these attacks have been increasing. There's reasons for them. Part of the reason is Iran, but part of the reason is what's going on in our culture right now, and how anti-Semitism, how Jew hatred has become normal and accepted because of so many of these crazy social influencers. The Tucker, the Candace, people like that.
And that includes Democrats as well, that have enabled and spurred it on, and Republicans doing the same.
It's both. You had, within hours after the attack happened yesterday, Rashid Tlaib gets up and has this huge rally about how the temple security overreacted. That's insanity.
Yeah, I know.
And at the same time, so that's on the left, right? The Omar, the Tlaib, and all those people. And on the right, you've got these schmendricks like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson calling for war, calling for Jews to be thrown out. It's on both sides. It's that old song, clowns to the left of us, jokers to the right. Here we are stuck in the middle.
Yeah. And the Iran actions, you cannot say that doesn't play a role in it. But it's also reaffirming that we have activists inside our country, and maybe led in by Joe Biden. This is a different case. I'll come back that in a moment. But we have a lot of terrorists inside our nation because they were not vetted, they were not checked because of the open borders under Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden. So we are more at risk than ever before from inside our nation.
Absolutely. That sleepy Joe Biden, as the president likes to call him, we have no idea how many dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of sleeper cells there are in this country. And they weren't vetted. This war against Iran, and we need to understand that Iran has declared war on all of Western civilization. It's part of the Quran theology of wanting to create a worldwide caliphate run by Sharia law. And the first line of defense is Israel, and the last line of defense is the United States. So this war is not about land or politics or power. This war is a theological war that they've been waging for 1,400 years, and they consider all of this just one battle. That's why these Shia Ayatollahs have such patience and willingness to sacrifice everything.
And I'm glad you added that, because if I've reminded the audience, they don't care if they die in their mission. They're more than willing to die as long as you die.
You're so right. So I've said this before, that this is these Shia Muslims, these people who are truly following the Quran, they're much, much worse than the Nazis. The Nazis wanted to kill the Jew, but they weren't willing to die to do it. These guys want to kill all infidels, Jew, Christian, non-observant Muslim, anyone who doesn't believe in Sharia law, and they are more than willing to die as martyrs in order to kill the kafir, in order to kill the infidel. We need to understand that that is their theology, that is their mindset.
Now, how do you do that without, at the same time, you almost have to make sure you're balanced, that not all Muslims are bent that way?
Okay, I'm. You're absolutely right, and this is a comment on the theology, not on the individual. But if you and I are honest, 80 to 90% of all Jews are two-day-a-year Jews. 80 to 90% of Christians are two-day-a-year Christians, Christmas and Easter. And 80 to 90% of Muslims are two-day-a-year, or are secularized Muslims. But we think in the West that the moderate, quote-unquote, Muslim is mainstream, and these guys who want to die to create a worldwide caliphate, that they're the extremists. We have to invert that. Everyone in America needs to understand that those extremists that we're calling extremists, they're actually the mainstream. And anyone who's moderate is actually a radical and considered an infidel.
And in fact,
we need to shift our viewing perspective.
And in fact, if we look at what's been happening in the streets of Tehran, the people want to be more westernized. They want to go back to what they had prior to us, our embassy being seized and the Ayatollahs taking control.
Absolutely, they do. Who wouldn't want to, unless you're part of the National Guard or part of the elite? Otherwise, anyone sensible would much rather live in a westernized nation for all of the obvious reasons.
All right, to that extent, and we talked about those who snuck in and were welcomed in by the open border policy. The man involved in the near bombing of the synagogue, in fact, the devices did go off. They just weren't that effective. He's been identified by the Department of Homeland Security as a Lebanese national who became a naturalized U.S. citizen more than a decade ago under the Obama administration. He entered the country through Detroit in May 2011 as an immigrant visa, spouse of an American citizen, and then even served in one of our National Guard units, but then became, or maybe always was, radicalized.
My understanding, and I don't know if this is accurate, one of the reports I read is that he actually was yelling Allahu Akbar as he was going against the security person. Did you read that as well?
I did see that, yes. But apparently he was not doing it when he was working in a National Guard unit, nor as he was, quote, a U.S. citizen.
Again, I think that Biden holds so much blame on this, of letting people in without being vetted. And one of the things to understand, so my great-grandparents came to America from Russia 130 years ago, 120 years ago. And like all Jewish immigrants, they wanted to learn English. They wanted to integrate into the culture. They wanted to assimilate. They wanted to be Americans who happen to be Jewish. What we're hearing across the board from all of these Islamic leaders in this country, the Tlaibs, the Omars, listen to what they're saying. They're not saying they want to be American. They're saying they want to change America into a Muslim nation.
Yes.
That's a problem.
What did you think about the FBI report, which quickly the White House said, well, that was taken out of context, but I still have been saying this for some time. If Iran does not have a ballistic missile to hit us, if they can put things on boats, including swarms of suicide drones, and get them close enough to our border that they can launch them, California being mentioned, and immediately the White House is saying, no, that's not possible. But the FBI, even Andrew McCabe, disgraced FBI agent, admits, yeah, we've always been concerned about such a plan. Your thoughts on that in our last minute?
I live in California, so obviously it's a big concern, and I live by the coast, close enough. And what makes me say that this is something that's very serious is the fact that Newsom responded to it, because Newsom tries to avoid having an actual dialogue or saying anything clear about anything, other than his hair gel. So the fact that he actually made a comment and said, oh, no, we're safe, tells me that this was a real threat. And it makes sense for them to do if they could have gotten a sea-launching vehicle or vessel out here close to California.
And, of course, this Sunday is the Oscars, and the Oscar committee told those coming, you'll be safe. We have federal, state, and local police available. Suddenly they want protection and law enforcement to do its job.
Yes, the hypocrisy of the Oscars is astounding. I've written a number of articles. I'm a columnist for PJ Media, and every year I end up writing an article about how hypocritical and astounding the entire Oscars are. 2 years ago, after the October 7th attack, they were wearing red pins on their lapels, not even realizing that that's a symbol of having killed Jews by beating them to death.
Rabbi Michael Barclay, and you can find him at the Rabbi's Table, Dialogue, Not Debate, on CRN Digital Talk Radio, and it's his podcast, The Rabbi's Table. Please check it out. Rabbi, thank you for your time and your insight, sir. We'll do it again.
That would be great, and thank you again for everything you do, and have a just really beautiful and blessed weekend.
And the same for you, sir, and be safe. Thank you again, Rabbi.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Onder wins. Onder, O-N-D-E-R, underlaw.com. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. When I have business clients or guests from out of town, I often take them to Cafe Napoli. I know they're going to enjoy any of the Napoli locations. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, next to Napoli C, Napoli Kirkwood, or Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Excellent food and intellectual conversation, if they bring the intellectual conversation. And NapoliSTL.com. NapoliSTL.com. You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting, they will take care of that. You need some mold remediation, they can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington.
This is News Talk STL.
You see me in the spotlight, ooh, whatever your style. Show me what you got, cause I don't wanna waste my time. See me in the spotlight, ooh, whatever your style. Show me what you got now, come and make it worth my while. Give it to me, I'm worth it. Baby, I'm worth it.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, I want to give you some news aside from Iran and the threats of possible attacks upon our homeland, which I still want you to keep in mind is certainly possible. And it does not have to come from off the shores of California. If they can get into Canada, and there's a very likely chance they can, versus trying to get directed in the USA, because we've shut our borders down. We're not going to let illegals in, and we're going to be very careful about who does get in. I'm not sure that Canada has. And you know that there are leftist leaning and probably some Iranian sympathizers inside Canada. And we do have those inside our nation. Now, Are they going to operate just as small cells and not have a coordinated effort, or just individuals? We don't really know, but we need to be alert for it. But let me deal with some other news first, and then I'll get back to an update from CENTCOM on what's happening in Iran. Adam Schiff, Senator Adam Schiff, this is according to Axios publication, which is a left-leaning, maybe firmly standing in the left publication, reports that Senators Adam Schiff of California, as you know, Democrat Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, all serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they are apparently involved in preliminary discussions plotting potential investigations into companies, colleges, even law firms that have worked or are working with the Trump administration. Here we go again. Here we go again. And they point out, of course, that Schiff did lead the first impeachment effort against Trump. Democrats falsely claiming that the president colluded with Russia. That's been debunked over and over again. And yet there are still, they're either uninformed or they're dimwits out there who believe Russia and Trump did collude. But according to Axios, with the effort the Democrats in both chambers of Congress are going to put together, that they will be able to take control of the House at the midterms. And the House has a broader subpoena power than the Senate. Democrats expect the Trump administration to fight against any investigations they launch. But fighting against these investigations would still be a fight. And Democrats would be questioning, why do major institutions choose to work with the Trump administration? Axios said that Democrats would likely choose to investigate donations to the East Wing renovations, as well as funding agreements involving institutions of higher education. You do understand that Donald Trump, when Obama was in the White House, Trump told Obama, look, you really need a large ballroom. You need something bigger than the East Wing for state events. I will pay for it out of my pocket. I will make sure one is built for you. And Obama rejected him. And while Trump wants it done now, he does not ask for federal tax dollars. But numerous corporations coming forward saying, we will help provide funding for it. Now, yes, you could say they're trying to buy connections to Trump. Everybody who deals with a politician, if they're offering or selling something, they're trying to curry favor with them. That does not mean it's illegal. And that would apply to Democrat groups that have helped Obama. It even applies to some of the the George Soros operations. But then there's the hidden dark money. And then that money that is stolen and used illegally to begin with. Breitbart publication, which is a right wing. I always try to give you the balance so you know and understand the source. I don't try to hide any of this from you. I want you to be aware of it. Breitbart had previously reported Democrats are weighing how can we target companies should we retake the House. In other words, they're already plotting to destroy any corporations that have helped Trump and probably are benefiting because of what Trump has done. Just yesterday, Trump stated that Ford Motor Company was going to build a $2 billion plant in Kentucky to make more American-made cars. That is American jobs. So would Ford Motor Company be targeted because they're going to be building jobs for Americans? Well, yeah, that's helping Trump, so we've got to destroy it. So much for caring about the little man and helping him out, right? Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, made this remark. The cardinal original sin of Trump, listen to me, you do not know how big this is going to get. Please listen. Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat, stating, the cardinal original sin of Donald Trump was to decide that he was going to use the presidency as a profit-making enterprise in his first term. How dare Raskin make the statement when you see what Joe Biden and Hunter and company did? How dare you even come near making such a statement without acknowledging what Biden, Joe, Hunter, and the rest of the Klan did? They don't want to recognize that. They want to consider that Trump is in the White House only to make money. He donates his presidential salary. You do know that. He never takes it. Joe Biden never donated his salary, and he's apparently a very wealthy man as well, but he was going to keep it. But Raskin continued, I would say that Congress should have impeached Trump the first time for receiving millions and millions of dollars from the foreign governments. Where is the proof? Oh, my God, I did that. I asked a legitimate question for which we know there's no legitimate answer. Where is the proof that Donald Trump personally profited by any relations with massive corporation giving? Well, they're going to try to give you this one. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, talking about trying to take over the news monopoly by Paramount, and said that Paramount should enjoy its growing news monopoly while they have it, because when Democrats are back in power, we're going to break it up, all of them. They had no issue. They had no issue with the leftist groups owning publications and networks if they were doing their call and available for when they wanted them, for whatever they wanted them. And I don't mean just reporting falsely, but omitting basic facts, omitting information that said what I just told you is a lie. If you want news credibility, you've got to present both sides. Let the public decide. Now, if you're doing a commentator role, as I do with this program, I may give you both sides, but I will damn sure give you my opinion as well. You may or may not agree with it. That is your prerogative. But I'm going to lay both sides out for you. Why would I spend my time quoting Jamie Raskin and Chris Murphy or Adam Schiff if I'm not willing to give you their side? Oh, and then you got Washington Congresswoman Yaya Paul. She said, I don't think you can do like 100 companies and investigate 100 companies, but I think you can do 3 and start with that. You can't do everything, but you got to pick a few of the worst and focus there. So that's their plan already. If they get control of the House, first action, impeach Trump again and go after anyone that has helped him at any point. And any donations from any company that they don't like. And also begin to chastise Ford and others for creating jobs for the common people. You're helping Trump. They will never look in the mirror to see what they have done. In the meantime, I want to share this with you. There's a far-left podcaster. I've never really listened to her. I know about her a bit. Far-left podcaster Jennifer Welch is stating on her podcast calling I've Had It blaming Biden and Merrick Garland for delaying DOJ investigations because she said that enabled Trump's 2024 victory. In fact, she says Joe Biden effed us so hard because they never charged Trump. Joe Biden was too busy trying to protect his family anyway. And you know that. Back to the theater of war, where again we have lost casualties. 6 members of a KC-135 tanker straddled Fortis while refueling a jet in the region went down. Not shot down, but some kind of accident happened. The fighter jet being refueled landed safely. So we might get more details, but we do have troops at risk. That makes 13 confirmed dead, whether it's direct war action. Keep them in your prayer. But there are those on the left who say, blame Pete Hegseth because he basically took a good military and ruined it. No, he didn't. He made it a warrior nation as it should be. He got the wokeness out of the military. He demanded higher standards. And White House spokesman Stephen Miller reminds you what Trump had promised.
What you're seeing right now is a military under President Trump's leadership that's not fighting politically correct, that isn't fighting with its hands tied behind its back. One of the reasons I fear that some people in this country lost faith in the military and the capacity to use that military to defend us is because we had a woke Pentagon. Because we had a military who at the very highest levels, not the warfighters, was forced to fight a less than full fight. What you're seeing now is a military that is unleashed in all of its lethal prowess to go out and seek, destroy, and kill the enemy, which is what militaries are for.
Perfect. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. Not be worried about how do we coordinate our uniforms and woke attitudes. CENTCOM pointing out today the Iranian regime has been the #1 threat to peace and stability in the Middle East for years. And we continue to take decisive actions to neutralize Iran's projection capabilities, attacking more than 6,000 targets. And we continue to launch more every hour. That's from Joint Chief of Staff General Dan Kane. Secretary of War Hegseth announcing, once again, look for the highest volume of strikes we have put out over Iran and Tehran. Now in our 14th day. He said we are picking targets as we choose because we have aerial dominance. And then, of course, he did acknowledge the death toll in the refueling jet crash in western Iraq. KC-135 straddled Fortis. Do not know if it was based out of Scott Air Force Base, which is the Air Mobility Command. Turkey announcing it stopped a ballistic missile fired from Iran. And the United Arab Emirates, Iran missile hit the tallest building in the world, Dubai's Khalifa, using an Iranian drone. Casualty reports not there, but we do know that Israel's Squadron 200, known as the first unmanned aerial vehicle squadron, has played a crucial role in destroying more than half of the Iranian regime's ballistic missile launchers. That's pretty fascinating. And yes, we do need to be worried about Iran, by whatever fashion, getting drones off the coast of California or wherever along our nation and firing from that position to hit the USA. Please keep our troops in theater and their families in your prayers. We will be back Monday. Please join us. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.